evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio. Your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the revival of our beloved drive-in culture. And of course, we got the dynamic duo in the house today. Mark, say hello, my friend.
Pow!
And if you guys haven't caught on, yes, we are talking Batman, and not just any old Batman. We're taking it back to the true Batman, Batman 66. And we have an amazing guest in the house, Thom Shubilla.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, brother, welcome. And you're the perfect guest because you are the author of PRIMETIME 1966-67, the full spectrum of TV's first color season.
Yep.
And that is Batman. And we're going to talk about it. Nice tie-in with our event that we just announced. We are bringing Batman 66 to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, and we are going to be working on some special surprises that might even be locked in by the time that you guys hear this. So really exciting. But let's get to you, Thom. Yeah. So where did this love for Batman come from, and specifically Batman 66?
Well, you know, it's a show that I remember watching as a kid every day right after dinner. It came on, I believe, on our local Fox affiliate. Yeah. When Fox was kind of still early Fox, it came on about right after dinner, and watched it fairly religiously every day. And it just something that always stuck with me. Something always struck a chord with it. You know, even I love the new Batman movies, but you know what? It's not Adam West. It's not Cesar Romero. Like there's just something not right about it.
No, I totally feel you. And we are literally the same exact age. And yeah. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the area?
I grew up in Wilkes-Barre. So about 40 minutes from the Mahoning. So
yeah. So we're the same area for sure.
Yeah.
Same experience for me. I fell in love with Batman in general. I believe it was 1990 when they really started pushing, after the big release of 89 Batman, the reruns. It was not only on Nick at Night, but like you said, it was on some, local affiliates.
Yeah.
And we were right on the outskirts of Philly, like suburbs of Philly. So we got all sorts of options. But my childhood wrapped up in a bow is eating ice cream with rainbow sprinkles and watching Batman. And literally, it was the most colorful thing I had ever seen, even though it was retro and old classic television. It was the most colorful and dynamic thing to ever hit my eyes at that time. So, I was 8? So yeah. That's the perfect breeding ground. Mark, what about you? When did Batman kapow your face?
Litigation is still pending on that. I originally saw Batman. It was in syndication. It was local independent station syndication. This would have been late 70s, early 80s. It was Channel 38 out of Boston and WPIX out of New York. They ran at different times of day, every day. And that's when they were running them from, beat up old 16 millimeter syndicated prints. So it was colorful to a degree, but it was nowhere near as colorful as it should have been, because those TV prints tended to fade and look kind of dingy after a while. But it was on every day. The whole tune in tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel had me hooked. You didn't have to wait a week like they did back in 66, 67 to see how things were going to turn out. And it was just, I didn't see it as funny as a little kid. That's what's interesting when I look back at it now. Now it's hilarious and it's clearly played straight. But
the peril was there as a child. Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was, these are superheroes and they're cool and they're fighting the bad guys. And I didn't get how really ridiculous it all was with, Vincent Price as Egghead and Roddy McDowell as Bookworm and Rudy Valley as a character.
A rogues gallery of Hollywood.
But Rudy Valley came on in about season 3. There was guys like Rudy Valley, Milton Berle,
right? Louis the Lion.
And guys like that. It became this that's around season 3. Ratings were going down the tubes of this show, and they were doing anything to keep them up. And as I kind of, as you know, in my book, I kind of looked at it and said, they were trying to recapture a young audience. Rudy Valley was 30 years past his prime in 1966. Like, there's no a 12-year-old going, I really love Rudy Valley.
That'll get me back to the show.
I'm listening to my grandparents' 78s all the time, and I just wish this guy would be on my TV screen.
Yeah,
this guy's
it made no sense.
So yeah, for me that TV show was Batman. And I also loved the Super Friends, which was on at the same time, and that was a slightly more serious take on the character. But I didn't read the comics, so as far as I was concerned, that's what Batman was.
It really is one of those things that once you get that introduction early on, and when Batman fever got really hot again in '89, people did start talking about like, hey, who's your favorite Batman? Like who's the best, and what that kind of got it on the radar with Adam West even being, an option. When I first watched it, I didn't even think about the actor playing Batman. It was truly Batman and Robin, In
my mind, those were the definitive ones. And right before the show, we were talking about it. But again, I think maybe the George Clooney Batman was about to come out, or maybe the Val Kilmer Batman had just come out. And I remember people talking at a summer camp I was at and saying, who's your favorite Batman? And everybody, I like, I was about to say Buster Keaton, Michael Keaton.
Yeah. Buster Keaton is great.
Buster Keaton is my favorite Batman. Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, everybody's going through it. And I went, well, Adam West, and everybody looked at me like I was insane.
Like, who is this guy? And I think the love for West, kind of, at least for the retro culture that we're living in now, it got hotter and hotter each year. Yeah. Like as it went on, the love for Adam West and that classic series. And for a long time, it wasn't available. Like once we got into the digital streaming and even physical media, I remember there was tie-ups and the availability of it wasn't there. But I mean, we have the Batman expert, so why don't we get to some of that stuff? But
I mean if you want to talk about there was this weird tie-up of rights between William Dozer's Greenway Productions, which was owned by I think Filmways a little bit later, and Warner Brothers, and there was just this like bad tie-up of, well, who actually owns the rights?
Right.
And finally, it was ruled that Batman could be released on Blu-ray and DVD. Just through some legal wranglings, it finally happened. And it was years of, if you remember, just kind of gray market copies you would get. It was just, you knew a guy who could get it on VHS for you.
Yeah, you like couldn't get it at all.
No. And I had a copy, a less than legal copy that still had all it must have been from the 16 millimeter prints that you were talking about, where it would say, insert commercial here. and the Blu-ray that did come out was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it was glorious.
You could see in some of the things you could really see Cesar Romero's mustache.
In all of its HD.
Yes.
Glory.
In some scenes you see Adam West perspiration under his armpits, like really heavy, just stuff that you did not see on TV that you were not meant to see on a 1966 television set.
Well, I mean, obviously the love runs deep from the childhood like us, but what brings you to the point where you're like, I'm going to do the deep dive. I'm going to write a book about this. What leads you to this?
I've always been interested in that type of stuff. I write for several magazines. I write for Monster Bash magazine and Scream magazine.
Shout out to Daryl at Scream magazine.
Shout out to Daryl. Yes.
We love Daryl.
So I started kicking around a couple ideas, and my first idea was, I didn't know if it was going to be a book or a project or something. I didn't know quite what it was going to be, or an article. And I wanted to write about the Beatles, Bond, and Batman, which was, seemed to be all kind of converged in 1966.
Yeah.
I found there was a blog, Beatles, Bond, and Batman. I said, okay, well, I can't steal this guy's idea. I'm going to have to find something else. And as I started researching, I realized that September of 1966, so that season, it marked the first time that every single show was in color. And
Wow.
Batman, so every single show in primetime was in color. The previous season, there were several shows that were in black and white that were no longer on the air or canceled, like Dick Van Dyke. So several shows were just didn't make the jump from black and white to color, like Dick Van Dyke. And several shows were greenlit that did make the switch, like, I meant to say the Munsters and the Addams Family. Those are the big ones. They never made the switch to color. And then shows like F Troop made the switch to color. I Dream of Jeannie made the switch to color. And so then that kind of really led on that, every show needed to be in color on all three major networks. And Batman really led the charge of this.
Oh my gosh. Talk about showing off the color.
I know, exactly. Batman was supposed to premiere in September of '66. However, ABC, they started getting jumpy with some of their new shows and then decided to just pull the trigger, and Batman debuted earlier in January of 1966, replacing Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, which was a long-running show, and also a Shindig, which was a dance show. If you, there were several, and then that was just newly canceled. So
yeah.
So Batman kind of led the airwaves with that, and really at the time, only about 9% of all American households had color television. After that season, things really started spiking color television sales.
It's like, you gotta see this.
Yeah.
You gotta see this guy and his boy Wonder running around. The tights, they're so colorful.
From people who lived through that era and were, of that age, just time and time again, I would hear when I tell somebody, I'm writing this book, and, time and time again, it was either oh my gosh, we had a color television and all the neighborhood kids came to my house to watch Batman, or we all went to a neighbor's house, an aunt's house, a grandmother's house who had color television because we had to see Batman in color.
Could not miss. And they made a big deal about it every single episode. Now in color.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I say it. The idea of this fandom and how long that it's run, the love of Batman was well loved before this television show kind of ramped up. And we could get into the history before we got to the television show, but really our connection, at least, to Batman 66 is going to be the movie. So do you touch on that?
Yes, I absolutely do. So like I said, after Batman was supposed to be introduced to the public through the movie. The movie was supposed to be the introduction of Batman and Robin and the Joker, the Riddler, Catwoman, and Penguin to the American public through the movie. But again, ABC pulled the trigger a little early, and they had an incredible first half of season, just incredible, and this Batmania really swept the country. And I have in the book, a number of things that it happened really fast. It was nightclubs all of a sudden changed their names to the Bat Cave or Wayne Manor. There was an ABC channel that had a mail-in things for Batman for Governor t-shirts, and apparently, it was the biggest giveaway they ever had.
Amazing. People
were driving around downtown San Francisco and flashing the bat signal on buildings. And the police
that's awesome.
Hairdressers were creating their special bat cuts. There was a jump in the stock market in March of '66, and I think it was New York Times financial reporters credited it to Batman sales.
Great.
Like crazy. Batman in June, right before the movie, and you may have seen the poster before, had a concert at Shea Stadium in New York, headlined by Adam West and Frank Gorshin as the Riddler.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, the Young Rascals, the Temptations, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, the Chiffons, all performed. And it was hosted by Cousin Brucey, the famous DJ. So.
Yes.
So all of this was taking place. There was bands were covering the Batman song. So records were just produced, and also up to that point, the Soviet Union also very against Batman. I don't know if you knew this.
Really?
Yes. The Soviet Communist Party newsletter Pravda stated that Batman brainwashed Americans into, and I quote, becoming willing murderers in the Vietnam jungle.
I'm just gonna punch that shit in the face. That's bad. How dare you?
Another Soviet paper claimed, Crocodile Today, that Batman and Robin were idealized representatives of the FBI. And said that Batman adventures had hardened American school children to violence so they could no longer flinch at cruelty and death relative to their stride.
Wow.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds serious.
It means it got deep into the culture. And I always think back, again, being the same age as you, is 89, when, like you said, kids were cutting the Batman into their heads and shaving him into, everywhere they could be, wearing the shirts. And, I can't even imagine. That's so cool to hear the things that went down during Batmania in
Batmania. It was absolutely wild.
Like you said, same time as the Beatles. So it's like, it's that same convergence of like ultra fandom.
Yeah. And even Batman at that time, it didn't outpace the original Beatles airing on Ed Sullivan. But when they played on Ed Sullivan in 1966, the Beatles, Batman outpaced it that same week. It was like one of the biggest airings of just a television show. So Batman outsold the Beatles that week. Outviewed the Beatles, which is quite incredible.
Adam West, I'm telling you, hypnotizing the nation.
But so on to the movie, right?
Yes. So produced before the television show.
So the movie was supposed to air before the television show. ABC aired it earlier. So then Batman had been on for, I think, 22 episodes. Then the movie came out in July of 66. And the premiere was held in Austin, Texas, which is an odd place for a premiere because Glastron, a boat manufacturer, they made the Batboat. And they also that week had a aquatic festival. So kind of the agreement was, we'll build you a Batboat. You have the premiere in Austin. And so they agreed.
Yeah. And
apparently, again, Batmania swept Austin and it was complete pandemonium. It was, sold out shows. People had signs like, Batman for president, things like that. They were made honorary Texans. Batman and Robin were not Adam West and Burt Ward, mind you. Batman and Robin were named honorary Texans by Governor Connolly at the time, who you may know, he was he was shot at the same time as President Kennedy. He was shot in the ribs. He was in the car as well. Right. So, all the stars were there. They judged a Batkini contest. There was a ski kite flying contest. So it was quite incredible.
A happening deep in the world.
So apparently it was one of the biggest things that ever happened to Austin, and that Bat movie. Again, I do touch on it quite a bit. 34 episodes were played before the movie. So there you go. I said 22. I apologize.
They had that many episodes in that short of time?
Yes, because twice a week.
That's right.
Twice a week.
Oh my God.
So they aired twice a week. They took over Ozzy and Harriet on Thursday and Shindig on Thursday.
Craziness.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's, in my love for Batman 66, and again, kind of getting into it as the materials became available on physical media, it really birthed this merchandising end of things that also took things by storm and had this whole other element, like you said, to get the word out about the show. And that's something that I always love. We know a lot of collectors, but anybody who has those kind of choice Batman 66 era merchandise is just clutch. Yes. Do you have anything from the series or anything?
Unfortunately, a lot of it's a little out of my price range. However, some of the cards I do collect, and any of the remade merchandise or merchandise made after the fact I do own. So
it sucks me in every time. You're like, you got me.
I know the feeling.
How deep did you dive as far as interviews and things like that for the book? Did you get to interview anybody choice?
What I really wanted to do with this book, I did not want to get people's recollection of the show. I wanted to kind of mostly cover, here's what people said at the time. Occasionally when you listen to interviews with somebody, they don't remember it happening. They remember telling the story. So I wanted to kind of, I did a real deep dive into newspapers, interviews at the time, magazines, things like that, press releases and ratings books and things like that. So I really did a lot of what we call primary source documents.
Right. And it really runs across that whole entire season. So it's much more than just Batman as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I do cover every scripted primetime show. So, you know, another show that I absolutely love from that time was, you know, The Monkees. I absolutely love.
Uh-oh, you just perked Mark's interest.
You sold the book on that alone right there for me.
I cover The Monkees, Star Trek, Dragnet, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Green Hornet, Mission Impossible.
This is our fan base right here, you know.
And also growing up, I absolutely positively loved Dragnet. I loved that came on Nick at Night, I think at 8 o'clock, and I absolutely did not miss it every night. I was the only 6-year-old watching, you know, can't wait. Dragnet.
I was totally like that too, because again, being in that same time frame, there was a summer that I remember. Like school stopped and I just lived on a couch and made sure that I got enough sleep during the day to be able to watch all the retro shows. And I was watching like Bob Newhart and things that like a kid would never ever be interested in now. But I was so captivated
there was
that.
A good sweet spot that we had of where we weren't completely overloaded with media.
Right.
Yet there was a need for older things to be out there. So if you had cable, they needed to fill the time slot. And I was more than happy to watch that.
Yeah. Nick at Night, man. It's funny now because like now that I have a munchkin, 4-year-old little Virgie, Nick at Night's much different. They're playing like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Where's Bob Newhart? Where's Mary Tyler Moore?
I freak out because I saw a little Nick at Night TV Land. I'm sorry. Nick at Night started off and it was old TV shows. And then they got more and more not so old TV shows. So they started TV Land and they're like, okay, forget about it. This one's about old TV shows. And then over time they're showing 2.5 Men, which I feel like is a show. If it's not still on the air, I feel like it went off like 2 years ago. So I don't know where you find actual, in my mind, retro vintage TV anymore. But I loved early Nick at Night. Was great. It was a lot of black and white stuff. It was like the Patty Duke show and the Smothers Brothers sitcom, and really shows that were really too short to get a syndicated run in some subsequent years. They would pick up, and it was, for a fan of old TV and pop culture, it was just heaven for the longest time.
Oh, it's the perfect timing again, too, where it's just like, looking back on it, it was so informative probably on the type of person that I am, having that kind of classic soul, you know?
I still blame my low SAT score on the fact that TV Land was showing a Get Smart marathon that day.
I love that
really
one, too.
Wanted to get home.
I remember when they did that, when they first got the series, they ran, I believe, the entire series over the course of a few nights, and I watched all of them. It was great.
I said, well, I have to get back. I have to watch. Get smart. I can't be taking the SAT today.
You roll up all late and delusional on your shoe phone. They're like, what's wrong with you? He's been up all night for 2 nights straight watching Get Smart.
Watching Get Smart.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
Glorious time. Well, let's talk about and tease it, the iconic vehicles of not just the movie, but the series as well. We are working on trying to get a Batmobile on the lot.
Oh my gosh, fantastic.
Yes, which, you know, we really saw a launching pad last year when we got the screen accurate DeLorean underneath of the screen. And it really added this element, just like the guests. When we have a celebrity there, it was almost like the ultimate celebrity. So I actually have a call with some guys out of Jersey tonight. But let's talk about it. Classic Batmobile. Do you cover any of the vehicles in the book?
Yes. So like I said, the Bat boat was featured in the film, the Bat copter.
The copter, yes. Which people have too. I heard that's out there.
Wow.
Yeah. How baller would that be to have the Batcopter drop in on a drive-in screening, that would just be like holy grail.
I was looking into that. One of those, either the Batboat or the Batcopter, now resides in England. So for anybody listening who's coming out to our show, whichever one is in England, you won't be seeing that one at the Mahoning.
Yeah, we're convinced that guy to fly on it. We have an airport right there, so it really works.
I've seen helicopters over the Mahoning.
Oh yeah, we literally have an airport right behind us that has the launching pad and the landing pad. So yeah, little smaller planes and all the medevacs go out from there, and news helicopters and
so and then the Batcycle, was another one on the show. So
yes,
and then that later Bat girl also.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Whenever she came zooming past in the opening credits, I was like, she's here, she's in it. It's gonna be a good one. Because obviously my love at that time of all the women kind of related to Batman. I was certainly taken.
That was when I met, speaking of Get Smart, one time I met Barbara Felton, like about 3 years ago, or Belle Felden of Agent 99 of Get Smart. And, still to this day, I'm like, oh boy, she's like my first crush here.
I know. You're like, I can't even,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, even with that movie, like Lee Merriweather as Kitka and Catwoman, yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things that even though it's so goofy, so over the top, so just like playful, and compared to the Batmans now, seems literally like kids fodder. It was just so real and perfect when it hit my eyes, which again probably would have been around that time that Batman really exploded. I don't remember seeing the movie earlier than that. I think my first introduction was through comic books, and then through the big explosion in '89 with Burton's Batman.
I remember my parents moving, like they needed me to be quiet for about an hour and a half. And they were moving things upstairs, and they just needed me out of the way. And my dad said, hang on, I have a tape. And he must have taped Batman 66, the movie.
Yeah.
Popped it in. That kept me quiet for an hour and a half. Easily. I must have been 5, 6.
Yeah, and that's the thing. My Munchkin's 4, he has seen Batman 66 so many times now. It's the most easy go-to as far as a parent.
That's a good upbringing right there.
Yeah, and it's got all the kids growing up on a drive-in lot, so he's certainly spoiled. But it's it's one of those movies that it captures the imagination young, and now with the branding of just superhero culture in general, like he's so into it. His favorite movie is Batman Lego, and it just gets sucked right into it. But so the strangest thing happened because you reached out, and it actually put the idea into our heads last year about the potential of playing Batman 66. You said, hey, I'm working on this book, and this might have been mid-season last year, end of season, whatever. And you said, I'm working on this book, and if I could ever do anything on the lot with you guys and do a tie-in or help you out, whatever. And it literally put that bulb off where it's like, we haven't done 66 yet. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we try to go after 66? And then it's like, oh, right, it was the Fox, so we couldn't get it for Fox for a while, the Fox titles for a while. So it was like perfect timing. So right at that moment, it worked its way onto the calendar and again, kind of made this thing happen. So I guess we have you to thank for this screening, my friend.
Fantastic. I'm glad. I'm glad that, and anybody who hadn't seen the movie before or haven't seen it in a long time, I really hope that they come out and see it, because I'm looking forward to seeing it in 35.
Oh, it's going to be glorious. That's when they sent back the print report, which they do traditionally. They'll let you know what's going on each reel, if there's any major issues. And I said, really, all I want to know is what's the color look like? Is that color going to be popping or what? So I'm really excited to see not just the condition, but just, again, see it on 35.
Yeah.
But now that we've gotten into full swing with the podcast interviews, having guests on and trying to do tie-ins specifically for shows that we're doing, I told Mark, I said, hey, would it be cool if we got the Batman 66 guy, which is what you were known as, onto the show to chat Batman 66 and talk about the screening that's happening Sunday, June 12th. And again, you may be able to come out and hang out in a Batmobile, which is crazy. But Mark took it from there and set this whole thing up. And we found out like a week or two ago, you're like super local.
Yeah.
We assumed you were from out of nowhere.
We've been having so many guests that live literally all over the country, and I keep my brain keeps going in knots with time zone differences. So I had to make sure. So are you? We're East Coast time, and you're like, I live a half hour away.
Half hour from you. I could drive there.
Eastern time is.
Yeah. I agree. Like I said, I grew up in Wilkes-Barre. So I'm always down with Mahoning. And actually, it's something I don't even know your first, official season of being the retro drive-in.
2015, I guess. Officially. Yeah. So
I don't know how I even stumbled across it or who had told me about it, and that's something kind of that I because lost to history at this point, how I found out, but I came out for, I think it was the Zombie Weekend. And Zombie Fest. And I also came out that season, I also came out for Camp Blood Weekend. And I don't remember which was first or second, but I absolutely fell in love with it. I said, wow, like this is incredible. Like, it was just a lot of like-minded people, yourselves included, like-minded people who, it was, I said, it was a cool hang. Like it was, I found people that I knew. And even if I didn't know anybody, I found somebody I could talk to. And, it was a great place for me and my friends to go to. And, absolutely fell in love with it. And the fact that it was shown in 35 millimeter when applicable, made it even better. And actually this past summer, I took my father for the first time. We came out to see Wizard of Gore.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
So me and my father came out to see Wizard of Gore, and
making memories.
He said to me, well, he said something along the lines of, what type of people are there to see Wizard of Gore?
Yeah. I said, what am I going to expect?
Nerds and punk rock types. And he got there and he went, you're right. Nerds and punk rock types. There we are. They're my type of people. So.
Yeah, it's perfect. And it's amazing that, again, that connection just didn't even come on our radar until recently. But being a Wilkes-Barre kid.
Yeah.
The history with drive-ins, Circle specifically, or any
no, Garden Drive-In is the
Garden, baby. That's right.
Garden is the one pretty close. Obviously went to the Circle occasionally, but the Garden was definitely my go-to drive-in. Circle, went there a fair amount of times growing up, and then recently for the longest time, the Moonlight.
Yeah. They recently
reopened.
Right. I think in 2019. Right?
Yes. 2019. It was just the sign for the longest time. And it's the coolest sign, aside from the Mahonings. But a really cool sign, but a deteriorating sign. And I still have in the hallway, it was these, I took a bunch of pictures of the sign and the original speakers stands. And the screen, which was absolutely falling apart, it was abandoned, I think, most of my life. And I remember I went and I took pictures of it one day thinking, well, one day a developer's going to come through and tear down this sign and I'm never going to see it again. Yeah. So I might as well take some pictures. And thankfully, though, somebody believed in drive-ins enough to bring that back and redo the sign, which the sign is absolutely beautiful. So
we kind of have a similar story on that. I remember it was early days. We were promoting kind of everywhere, and we went up to this kind of no offense, but it was kind of like a podunky punk rock flea market. It felt like in the middle of nowhere, and we passed by the sign, the marquee. And
I was at that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, no way. So, we kind of get to this thing, and it's lightly attended, but always, anybody we can talk to about the Mahoning's great. And Matt decided to go venture out and explore it. And he was showing me videos of when he got back, and it was like the whole entire snack bar was collapsed in on itself. The screen was done for, again, the marquee. So it's really beautiful to see that they were able to turn it around.
But yeah, and then and also having some friends in which is the Laurel Drive-In in Hazleton, which is now closed.
Yeah.
So I have some drive-in memories there. But yeah, no, I like I said, I grew up a classic TV guy, monster kid. This is just kind of like encompassed my life for quite a while. And so I decided, you know what, I really need to write about something about this, and as much as I'd like to write about monsters and things like that, I feel like there's a lot written about that. But this one, though, there was a niche, and so I had to write about it. And then, just kind of, again, all of this kind of converged into one. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to pick your brain because the trajectory, I always love asking people that are here specifically with something that they created, to take the opportunity to ask, like, how did you get to writing reviews and writing for the horror mags? And
I wrote for this magazine, Monster Bash, which is the convention out of Pittsburgh area. It's out of Mars Cranberry. Monster Bash. It's a classic horror film convention, mostly focusing on Universal monsters and Hammer, 50s B films and stuff like that.
Right. So
that's out of Pittsburgh, and I've been going since I was 14 years old. I remember asking my dad to take me, thinking he was going to say, maybe. At one point, I remember he looked at it and went, "Yeah, okay, we can go." And I was like, "Oh,
I dream of that day."
And so I've been going ever since. And I became, at one point, I became part of the staff. A couple years later, became part of the staff. And so I started writing for the magazine. And then Scream Magazine, Daryl, who is also a Wilkes-Barre guy, we had known each other for a little while. And one day he was at the local record fair that's in Wilkes-Barre about twice a year. And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know you were local." And I said, "I didn't know you were local." So I started writing for him. I started doing some reviews. So
the dots connected perfectly. Destined over records.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. We love that. Besides drive-ins, anything pop out for you as far as memories with movies and theaters and things like that in general?
I remember watching probably the same movies on repeat that my dad had taped from television, a lot of 50s horror films. The story, apparently, the day before I was born, my mother watched the movie The Incredibly Strange Creatures That Stopped Living to Become Mixed Up Zombies.
I love that.
It all makes sense.
I love Ray Dennis Stickland.
So I kind of surmised from that I never had a chance. I watch a lot of classic horror films, with my father. I always said, like, watching Plan 9 from Outer Space at a fairly young age, I honestly think changed my life. I think, I was already watching kind of this retro stuff, and then I kind of fell down this rabbit hole of watching, B horror films and just obscure horror films and trying to find them and staying up late and watching them on television and taping them. And, if we didn't get a channel at a time and I knew a friend did, making sure that they taped it. And that certainly led me down this path of that. And, and I always said, like, in high school, it was, I kind of got into records and punk rock and things like that because I would read monster movie magazines all day and people assumed I liked, the Misfits. And I was like, I don't know who that is, but okay, cool. So I think that certainly gave me, really changed, who I am. So yeah, so certainly a lot of VHS memories, certainly the big one there for me growing up.
We are all products of the video store and cable.
Yeah.
And I don't know how hardcore your parents were with it, but my mother, off of HBO and whatever else we paid for, Showtime, would number and catalog every single thing. And, we had a book that you could go to and, look up the number.
Oh, that's hardcore.
Oh, it was. And looking back on it, I never realized how kind of influential it was on me. And it may have just been a little OCD element to her, but like it really locked in this idea of like, wow, the collection is everything.
Yeah, and you could always go back to it, and again, that became like a film school for I think a lot of us.
It's nuts for, you know, a younger audience listening to this. It's like the idea that you couldn't just watch anything whenever you wanted. We had the ability for the first time to capture video off of the television and put it onto a slab that you could then go back and revisit that movie. It was mind-boggling. As a kid, it was literally mind-bending to be like, so we're gonna capture the television onto what, tape? It's like, yeah. And obviously we know where that went. It was the birth of physical media and the shift of the whole entire theater culture, and obviously the impact it had on drive-ins. It's all down the line, kind of this domino effect. And
Absolutely.
If we go back to it,
I had again, my father had a lot taped from Philadelphia television, and there was a show, and it came on after I was conscious of it, but I had a lot of tapes of it. It was called the Cannes Film Festival. It starred Lorraine Newman of Saturday Night Live.
God, okay? How is this off my radar?
That was a syndicated thing that was on for, it wasn't on for very long.
No, it was on for maybe a season or two. And it was Lorraine Newman played a person, this lady who ran a movie theater that was also a laundromat. And they didn't have any money, so they played awful films, and people would go and watch the movie. So it was almost like a Mystery Science Theater, only they didn't make fun of the movie while the movie was going on.
But she was kind of like the faux host?
Yes. So people would go to watch the movie while their laundry is being done. And then when they cut in, they talk about the movie. And I had an incredible number of those taped. And that's kind of, again, kind of my film school came into.
Did you ever work at a video store?
I never did. You know what? And I always would try the one by my house, but I don't know. No, I never worked in a video store. I kind of always wish I did.
Yeah, that was a big part, not only of the upbringing, but the connection from high school into film, into college, into kind of what we do now at the Mahoning. In a weird way, it introduced the idea of lining movies up together and programming and deep diving on cinema, and kind of the reason everybody our age was interested in jumping into a video store was like, let's go to Tarantino Film School. And in a weird way, it didn't feel like it, even though I was absorbing so much cinema. It's so invaluable when you literally are just like swimming in VHS and DVD discs every single day and living it, you know?
I think always the lady that owned the video store by my house wouldn't let me because in high school, I couldn't work there because they had the, what was behind the saloon doors.
18 or older. Yeah. They always put it right by the kids section. I don't know why. It was the weirdest thing. And like those saloon doors, sometimes, they were open on the bottom, open on the top. So you could totally catch peek.
Yeah, absolutely. There was this video store by my house. It was called Pepe's Video. And I went in there fairly recently. It was still an operating video store.
No.
Yes. And fairly recently, I decided to go in there maybe about 5-6 years ago with my buddy. And I walked in, and it was these two older people, and it was almost like I disrupted their Jeopardy watching.
Yeah.
They looked at me like, what are you doing here? And I asked a couple questions about VHS, and it seemed like I was bothering them. So I was like, okay, I'll leave. And every time I'd pass it, I would say, is that still open? And it was still open. And recently it closed, and they had an auction. Yeah. Or not an auction, they had like a sale. They had like a garage sale. Like you can go in and buy videotapes. And I said it was like a video store clerk fantasy camp. Because if you went in, you had to find you got the box, you went in the back and found the corresponding number. And I walked in through the saloon. I walked into the saloon doors. I went, okay, there's a lot of 80s porno here. Okay. And it was interesting.
It's that culture that, again, is such a crossover with what we do and what our fans are kind of into and brought up on. But
yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but certainly Batman 66 and the Batman television show. And when I say Batman 66, that's just what I call the movie. But the television show as well. When I first saw it, I put myself right in Robin's shoes. Like, Batman was certainly a hero, but because I was at that age, I was such a youngster, I put myself into Robin's shoes. Did you guys have that kind of crossover where you went from, one character to another as far as relating to them in the show? See,
I always wanted to be Maxwell Smart. So.
Again, talking through the shoe, the most cool, the dopest thing I ever seen on television.
I don't think I ever necessarily related to one or the other, or one over the other. I just liked watching the show. I just thought it was cool.
I remember when the peril was real, and they had the cliffhangers, and at the time I was watching it, I think they did the double bangers back to back on whatever the reruns were. And sometimes it would be out of order. So it would be like Robin hanging over a watery pit, almost, getting ready for his death. What will happen next week? Next time on Batman. And then it would cut to the beginning of another show, another Batman episode. And you're like, no!
At some point, they started doing 3-part episodes. There was a handful.
That's
of
right.
Part. And I don't know what they did in syndication with that, where they'd show, like you said, they call it like the double bangers, where it was, I don't know what they did. That's an interesting question.
It was always the doubles, because I remember on the box set, I had the realization for the first time looking over the episode titles, they all rhymed. It went from, like the first episode, then the second one would have a cheeky rhyme, So that seemed like that was their formula, kind of out of the gate.
Yeah, they definitely all rhymed. If you looked at, I didn't realize that for the longest time either.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, you wouldn't as a kid. Do they announce at the beginning of the episodes the titles? They do, don't they?
They put it on the screen, but I don't think they announced it. And the announcer was also William Dozier, who was also the producer of the show.
Bill Dozier, the king.
Yep. He also produced Green Hornet that year.
Yep, he's the name you would see on kind of all the superhero.
And he had a great announcer's voice.
Great announcer's voice. You're right.
He is the voice of Batman in a way, the show at least.
And that season, he also produced a show called The Tammy Grimes Show, which is the example of a disastrous show. It only lasted 4 episodes, and then it got canceled. So William Dozier had some success in 66 and some not so success in 66.
Well, we can't talk about Batman 66, the movie, without talking about the Rogues Gallery of villains, because like you said, it was an introduction kind of to the audience of all of them, or at least a nice handful of them. So where do you guys fall? Who's your favorite in the Rogues Gallery, at least in the 66 lineup?
For me, Frank Gorshin as the Riddler is peak villain.
He is electric. Like, he is giving 150% every time he is on screen.
And absolutely, Jim Carrey in Batman Forever is playing Frank Gorshin.
Oh, without a doubt. He's Rubberman.
One of the biggest regrets that I have in life is Frank Gorshin played the Kirby Center in Wilkes-Barre.
Oh my
God,
I was
in college.
I saw that. Yes.
As in the Sunshine Boys, and I didn't go. And he maybe died a year or two later. And again, big regret in life. I'm like, what? Why didn't I go to that? Like, what was wrong with me? I'd go to anything. So Frank Gorshin has to be number 1. Number 2 has to be Cesar Romero as the Joker with his
prominent
mustache.
It's really prominent in the movie for sure.
Yes. And
what's the story behind that? He just kind of refused.
He didn't want to shave the mustache.
What a pimp.
That was his thing. That was his look.
Look, I know you got a popular show and all, but the stash stays. I know my look, honey.
Yeah. And then Catwoman, definitely, for being an early crush of mine. And no offense to Burgess Meredith, but, Somebody has to come in last. And
I go Burgess all day, because as a kid, again, it was so over the top and such like he had the kind of characteristics of a penguin, you know, would be from the laugh to the way he kind of walked. And even though he's so over the top as everything is in this movie, he captured my imagination in a big bad way.
You know, and both he and Burgess Meredith and Cesar Romero did not ever play that type of character, which I think is incredible. You know,
the fact they were able to jump into that type of over the top character.
Burgess Meredith was in Of Mice and Men. Burgess Meredith was on, you know, in The Twilight Zone in serious episodes. Cesar Romero played, you know, the Latin lover in seemingly hundreds of films.
That started kind of this trend as Batman got bigger and bigger. They started doing those guest appearances where Batman and Robin would walk up the side wall, a window would open, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, Jerry Lewis or whoever of the time, you know.
And the one, it was Colonel Klink from F Troop. And I said, so Batman let a Nazi war criminal go free.
Good point.
Hogan's Heroes, yeah. Colonel Klink and F Troop was the time travel episode.
Oh, not F Troop. Yeah, that's different. Yeah, that's different.
I know. I thought about it for a second.
Colonel Klink and thank you. Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, Colonel Klink and Hogan's Heroes was at the window, and he let a Nazi war criminal go.
Well, ratings. You know, they had to say hello and continue on their way. Any other elements that pop out about the movie that were memorable either as a kid or that you're looking forward to?
Always the one that kind of popped out for me as a kid was the fact that the Penguin purchased from the Navy a pre-atomic submarine. And for the longest time, I kind of figured, well, that must be a thing. Like, you must be able
to just call up
to purchase old submarines if you want, right?
Of course.
Like, the movie lied?
Who signed for this? P.N. Gwynn? P.N. Gwynn. You morons!
That's right, P.N. Gwynn.
Can't get anything past these guys. P.N. Gwynn.
Get a little bit more creative. Come on.
Yeah, but that's what I love about this movie. And it always captivated me, too, when they turn all the leaders of the different countries into like different powder dust, you know, and they sweep them up into little vials. You know, the effects and graphics might not have been there, but boy, oh boy, as a kid, hooked me right.
You know, I didn't really need it.
People always joke about it, but like, you know, that shark, as hilarious and crazy as it is, that opens the movie. It lets you know right out the gate, like, hey, if you're expecting some serious madness, you know, we're attaching a foam shark to this man's leg, and he's repelling it with spray.
And you know, I don't know if you ever watched the '40s Batman serials.
Yeah.
You know, and they're dark. I mean, they're dark serials, and
they're crime stories, noir stories.
No problem killing anybody in that. Batman just straight up will kill people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then you kind of get to this.
Yeah, the mythos totally shifts, you know. And when I think about where Batman has gone, and really superhero movies have gone, it's nuts. I remember when '89 Batman came out, it was like, oh my God, this ain't your dad as Batman. You know, it ain't your bright lights and fancy tights. It's dark, bro. And you watch it now compared to The Batman, which was the big recent hit. And it's like, oh my God, this is playful in comparison.
Well, I remember when Batman '89 came out, and there was a bit of a backlash that it wasn't the Adam West Batman, that it wasn't fun and sunshiny and bright colors. People who their only frame of reference was the '66 TV series were like, what is this dark, angry, brooding Batman? And then the comics fans were, well, that's how he's been for years in the comics. But I remember at the time, and even myself, I was a little put off that it didn't look fun. It looked serious. But I mean, I saw it and I loved it. But there was a little bit of friction at the time when that came out.
And there even was, and I mentioned this in the book, I don't know how serious the news reports were about this, but apparently Adam West was trying to angle for some role in the movie, or even to reprise his role as Batman.
That would have been crazy.
I think he was putting out statements saying, yes, I'd like to be Batman again. And I don't know how serious he was. I don't know how serious they were, but eventually the producers put out a statement, when somebody asked them about Adam West, and their response was, who's Adam West? And I think that kind of killed it right there.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, passing of the torch.
So it was in 81 they purchased the rights to Batman. It took them that long to make it, and then they responded, something along the lines of, who's Adam West? So that kind of killed the Adam West.
Even though I was so young, I remember the controversy. I remember my parents talking about it over dinner, like, Mr. Mom is going to be Batman. I don't know. It was a big thing. Like, why would they choose this guy? Almost like he hadn't shown off his chops up to that point, to be Batman. Mm-hmm. And every time I think back to Batman, it's like they're, in my mind, even though we love Adam West, my Batman is certainly Michael Keaton, to the point where my son's middle name is Keaton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Adam West did, up until that point, he was betraying Batman. Like, he was Batman wherever you wanted Adam West to be Batman. It was kind of crazy, too.
Television shows.
Somebody sent me down the rabbit hole a while ago when I was writing the book. And they said something like, Adam West, right, he stopped being Batman when he was shot out of a cannon as Batman, right? And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, he was in the 70s. He was shot out of a cannon. And I said, I never heard this before. So it was on, do you remember the show E! Mysteries and Scandals? It was on the E! channel, and they talked about like Hollywood mysteries and scandals. And the one was Batman. And I don't remember what the mystery or the scandal was. But Adam West says, oh yeah, I was shot out of a cannon at a circus in Indiana in the 70s. And as I was flying through the air, I said, I'm never wearing this bad outfit again. I said, okay, fair enough. And I've found evidence of him wearing the bat outfit, going to Memphis to challenge Jerry the King Lawler to a wrestling match. They never actually wrestled. Conventions, things like that. I found that he was shot out of a cannon, maybe, but also maybe not, at a Shriners Circus. But then there's hundreds of other times where he's wearing the bat outfit.
My best friend growing up as a kid met him and Burt Ward in costume at some, I think it was probably an auto show or something in the Boston.
There's a lot of auto shows.
And then he did the that Legends of the Superheroes special, which I saw that on TV when it first aired, and I was out of my mind as a little kid. I just stumbled upon it flipping channels, and it was like, my first thought was, this is a live action Super Friends, and why did nobody tell me about this? And then it was, wow, that's in my head, the real Batman on TV again, on videotape, which was really cool.
And that was one of those kind of gray market things for a million years, where never officially released, and you maybe get a third generation VHS tape.
That's how I first got a copy that was from a video tape trade from somebody, and that wasn't until Warner Archive put it out a few years ago that you could get a legit copy.
Yeah, maybe what was the other, it was like the Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah, same thing.
Maybe you get it from a friend of a friend.
And it was one of those things where, thank God, somebody taped it and didn't throw that tape away years ago. But that's the only reason anybody has ever been able to see the holiday special. The Super Legends of the Superheroes specials, I don't recall if those were from broadcast or somehow from like a internal tape, the copy that I had. But it was certainly, fuzzy 9th generation, and we were happy to have it those days. Tape to tape transfer.
I was very upset with the Star Wars holiday special because I'd heard about it for a while, and then I had heard at some point that Han Solo kisses a Wookiee, and it never happens. And
if that piece is built up for you in any way, you will be let down.
I was very let down. I watched the whole stupid thing, and I said, Han Solo never kisses a Wookiee. What's going on here?
I was just down to meet like Chewie's whole entire family. I was like, what does Chewie's mother look like? I'm curious.
I'm very curious. I think about that all throughout Empire.
It kept me up at night. Well, again, just a reminder to everybody, the screening of Batman 66 is going to be on June 12th. So if you guys are planning on coming out for Kathy and Kelly, Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney, Save the World, on Friday and Saturday, stick around. Mark, any more for our good friend Thom?
I mean, I could talk endlessly about the 66 to 67 TV season, but I won't just to save a little bit more minutes of the lives of anybody listening to this. There was a thing that I always found fascinating. So Dozier did Batman 66, huge success. Mm-hmm. He did Green Hornet, I guess a decent success, although it only went one season and was like impossible to see.
Only lasted a season, yeah. The Green Hornet, if I can interrupt, with Green Hornet, again, came out the year in question, and he tried to make a serious show. When Batman was, kind of this corny, campy, as they constantly call it in every review, they tried to make it very serious, and it wasn't very colorful. Like, it probably worked just as well black and white. And the only thing it did was really make a star of Bruce Lee. But
right. And then there was a Dick Tracy pilot that I've seen that is very much in the I say it's in the Batman vein. It's got Dozier's voice on it. So you hear that, all you can think of is Batman. And did he do the Wonder Woman pilot?
Did the Wonder Woman pilot as well, yes.
It's so funny that those others didn't take off. With the huge
Dick Tracy was supposed, and I can't think of what it was, but Dick Tracy was supposed to replace some show mid-season, and it just never got picked up. Wonder Woman just never took off. And also, if you look for it, there was the Batgirl. It wasn't a pilot, but they had a short to help introduce the character, and almost it was really there to convince network executives, like, hey, we need Batgirl. Like, something needs to be added to this. And so he did do a number of those pilots. I just looked it up. So there was a show called The Hero, which was about a Western star who was like a dopey dad when he got home. And he was, the guy Richard Mulligan, who was on the show Empty Nest, and he was on the Golden Girls. And so Dick Tracy was supposed to replace The Hero, but they put on Dragnet instead. That reboot of Dragnet, which, by the way, I also loved Dragnet. And like I said, that first episode of Dragnet, are you familiar with the colored Dragnet series?
That's the one I think I know much more than anything else, because that was the one that was in reruns in the
Nick at Night and things like that. So if you ever see the Blue Boy episode where the guy's on LSD? And
oh my God, I'm having a flashback.
I think that's the one most people who, if you've seen one episode of Dragnet, it's probably
Blue Boy. That was episode 1, season 1. That was like kicking in the door to the 60s with that show. Like kicking in the door, with a battering ram. Just how colorful that show was and how 60s that show was, that episode was.
Get ready for prime time, folks. Man, in your face.
Yeah. That really is a pretty strong shot across the bow to say, this isn't the old black and white Dragnet.
I don't think it was on the show. It was on, I don't think it was on the air for about 7 years. I think it went off the air in 59 or 60, took a hiatus, and then they brought it back in 67, in January 67, which is...
It lost its steam.
Yeah.
Well, since you're such a Dragnet fan and, we're the Mahoning, how do you feel about the Dragnet movie?
I was never a big fan of it. I like Tom Hanks. I like Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, hasn't made the Mahoning cut yet. Mark, you got a soft spot, or are you like?
I remember thinking it was pretty funny, but I was not close to the series. And I'm a guy now. There was this spate of feature films based on older TV shows 20 years or so ago. And they were always comedies. And I always felt like they crapped on the source material. And it always kind of offended me because I liked the shows they were making movies out of. And I could see where if you were a big Dragnet fan, you could feel that way about it. So I liked it, but then it was, I think I knew the movie more than I knew the show at that point.
Yeah, I will say, for anybody who hasn't seen it, well worth it for the credit sequence where Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks have a rap song.
I played that. I played that in my DJ set during Thanksgiving. City of Crime. It was an MTV video at the time.
Whoa.
Nothing better than a little Hanks laying down a sweet
And
rap
for your
lyric,
DJ session for Batman, and I do chronicle this in the book, there were seemingly an endless amount of cover versions of the Batman theme.
Oh my God, I have so many. I have a couple records because, you know, if I saw Batman on the front of a record, I was like, well, gotta get it. And of course, it was always like a jazzy or a Latin take or something on it.
There was also a Frank Gorshin Riddler single and a Burgess Meredith Penguin single, like in character.
Yeah.
So we would. Oh yeah, we would definitely play those.
Yeah.
Oh.
And on the B side of the Frank Gorshin, he covers a song by Bread, the 60s band.
Hell yes.
I'm flipping through my book because I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. So we have Neil Hefti, who's the composer of the Batman theme, Nelson Riddle, who is the band leader of the Batman theme, both recorded it. The Ventures, Jan and Dean, University of Central Florida's Jazz Study Big Band, the Flying Horse Big Band.
Definitive recording.
The sensational guitars of Dan and Dale, which is actually Sun Ra, the avant jazz musician, Link Ray, Los Batman, The Markets, The Who, Laverne Baker changed the lyrics of her song Jim Dandy to the Rescue to Batman to the Rescue. It's incredible. It's incredible. Drummer Sandy Nelson covered it. Have you ever seen the movie Creature of Destruction? It's a really awful, low-budget monster film. It's there's a song in there, Here Comes Batman, which is kind of crazy. Just a ton. There's French themes. So you have your awesome DJ set squared away.
More than Bats.
It'll be very, very Bat-centric.
Nice.
There's talk about a Batusi contest under the screen before the show.
Very nice.
Well, let's get back to the book. How can people find it? I take it it's out there in the world.
It is at the time of this recording. We're about to be sent to the publisher. I sent in my final changes that needed to be made, and so I sent back the final proof, and it will be going to the printer shortly. And so it's put out by McFarland. The book is available online. I see it is currently up for pre-order on their website, on Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, anywhere books are sold. At that point, I will have them at the Batman screening, and I'm sure I'll be at the local horror film convention near you.
Yeah, that is worth mentioning that Thom will be in the house filling all of our heads with knowledge at the Batman screening. And have you ever, at your convention rounds or the Monster Fest or anything, have you ever come across a 66 Batmobile?
Yes, at it was at the comic book convention in New York a couple years ago. I had seen it. Yes,
I've seen photos, and I think it might have been on lot for one of the horror conventions that we did, but we never got to see it. When we talked to the National Historical Vehicle Registry folks, we talked about the most iconic cars and what deserves to be, preserved, and certainly this is at the top of a lot of people's lists. Yeah. Although this is a totally redone vehicle.
I believe the one that usually makes the rounds, I think, is a 67 car. So obviously it's not the original, but it's still amazing looking.
Yeah.
And there's actually a company that's existed for a few years now that manufactures new Batman 66 Batmobiles.
I follow them in hopes that, if one day I hit the lottery,
take my money.
Or if they have a Black Friday sale or something, you can pick one up. They are completely 100% accurate to the original show, and they just make them. If you have enough money, you can literally go on a website today and order a 66 Batmobile.
The greatest thing ever.
God bless America.
Talk about a head turner down the highway. Holy Christ.
I love it. So, and then also with the book, the foreword is by Frank Santopadre, who, unfortunately now was Gilbert Gottfried's co-host on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast.
I really wanted to bring up the Orange Wedge story, but I thought I would take the high road.
In this book, I could not, anytime I'm writing, So I'm a big fan of Gilbert Gottfried, and have been literally my entire life. And he's just funny on every level. I think he's one of the funniest comedians of all time, and most underrated. I loved USA All Night. Loved any talk show appearance he did. Anytime he was on Howard Stern, I loved his podcast. But I could no longer, like, anytime I brought up Cesar Romero in this, I would just laugh to myself. But unfortunately, we lost Gilbert, and I was absolutely floored yesterday. And
we all were, we're in that same circle where we're such fans of the podcast.
And I had the pleasure of meeting him, and hanging out with him a couple times. One time, I've been up to the podcast a couple times. My friend Kevin, who's working on a documentary about the artist Drew Friedman, it's called The Vermeer of the Borscht Belt. He went up to do the podcast, and one time with Daryl from Screen Magazine, I went up, and several events I've been with Gilbert, and like I said, kind of one of the funniest people, and I just couldn't, I was like, oh my gosh, like Gilbert has passed on, but I had the had the pleasure of meeting him several times, hanging out with him a couple times, and a very big monster movie fan. If you have listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
So
we'll talk about it here, and I'm sure Mark can jump in as well with the condolences. But we tried for years to try to get Gilbert to come out for what we thought would be the perfect connection, is the Universal Monsters event. And we were thinking originally like, oh, we'll play some Gilbert movies, we'll screen something and we'll have him come out and do a comedy show and a meet and greet and all that stuff. And it's like, let's do something that's going to be so in his vein. And in looking at the calendar, it's like, well, we have it. It's right here. Mark, you were a huge fan of the podcast, and we're kind of connected in a way through Dino.
Yeah, I've been listening to Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast for several years now. And it's just this amazing ode to old time showbiz. And, you want to talk about TV from 66 to 67. They get so many people on the show who were in these programs. And I know Burt Ward was on the show. Was Adam West on the show at one point? Maybe that was a little bit after.
Adam West was, yes.
Okay, and I believe Lee Merriweather was on. So a lot of people who were on the old Batman show. And there's this, and I'm not going to say what it is. I'd say strongly encourage you to listen to the episodes. But if you listen to more than 3 or 4 episodes, you'll hear the Cesar Romero story we're talking about. It was one of Gilbert's favorites to mention. And a friend of ours, Dino, who's a pal of mine from the area that I'm in now, and from fellow movie lover, works at the Archive in Connecticut and does his own podcast. I Eat Movies, was the social media guy once Mike McPadden passed away of the Gilbert podcast. So a lot of us are connected very peripherally, or people I know are connected to the show. And I saw Gilbert live once, and it was one of the funniest hour or so I've ever spent, doubled over laughing until I couldn't breathe. So it's a real shock. And as Virgil said, we had always thought of trying to find a way to get him to come out to the theater. Very recently we were talking about maybe we run the Problem Child movies and have him come out. So it's a big loss, and really kind of shocking and out of the blue.
Yeah, and there was talks that he was sick, but nobody kind of knew how sick he was.
Yeah, I had heard some things in the last couple months, and you're right. I didn't know how sick you don't really know, and but like I said, I was absolutely floored, and one of the funniest guys, and and also one of the that show also. Certainly an inspiration to writing this book, and when I was able to talk to again Frank, his co-host, into doing the foreword, and he wrote it about a year ago, and he really knocked it out of the park. Frank really writes a wonderful love letter to that 66 season, and talks about kind of his first experience with color television, kind of compares it to President Cleveland's flipping the switch of power at the World's Fair, and again just writes this absolute love letter to the 66 television season.
Well, rest in peace, Gilbert. Our love to Gilbert's family and the Amazing Colossal podcast family. And we really hope, we've been talking about it in our inner circle. We really hope Frank carries things in there. It's such a source of not only entertainment for people, but now kind of a community like the Mahonings built. All right. Well, it's been a blast talking to you, my friend. And we really cannot wait to get you out to the lot. And
well, I'm definitely going to be there or sooner than later. The Schlockerama weekend. looks fantastic. It is absolutely up my alley.
For a lot of people, it's their go-to.
And also, I have to thank you for the Schlockorama. The one year when you showed, it was one of the Mexican ones.
Yeah, it was one of the Aztec mummy movies.
Aztec mummy movie. I never thought that I would see that on film. So
that was a very Exhumed Films programs those, and they do an amazing job. Yeah. And that was like a film they had borrowed from like this, another fellow collector, extremely rare 35 print of a English dubbed. I don't remember specifically which one it was, but it looked great on the screen.
I remember that weekend. It was, sometimes I'm like, all right, two features, I'm good. I could go home, but that one I had to stay because it was just absolutely incredible.
Well, we love you for the support. We love you for deep diving into a culture that we truly love. Again, the name of the movie, the name of the book, Primetime, 1966 and 1967, the full spectrum of TV's first color season. And we're really looking forward to be able to get our hands on the book.
Yeah.
Thank you again, my friend. We'll
see
you.
Thank you for everything you do with Mahoning too.
Oh, bless you, my brother.
It's just a wonderful, like I said, it's just someplace that, just the second I stepped on the lot, whether it was, like I said, either Zombie Weekend or Camp Blood Weekend, I knew it was someplace special. So
the magic of the Mahoning. Well, we love you, brother. We'll see you out there soon.
Love you guys too. See you this summer. Be in touch.
You got it, brother. And Jeff, on that note, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.